Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are part 2 of the bar build, and we're going to discuss building this top and epoxy coating it. So let's jump to it. All right, so this is pretty much all you need in order to do the epoxy, aside from a tarp. It's nothing more you have here than a standard paint mixing cup. Want to make sure you have one that has a 1-to-1 ratio on it, at least for this tabletop epoxy. You know, get you some paint steers, some foam brushes. These things are what you really want to use for any vertical surfaces or your front face. You can kind of push the stuff around with this. These work great. Get you a squeegee for, squeegeeing out the main portion. When you come back and do your, your sand between your coats, 320 grit on an orbital sander works great. You also will need a heat gun, or you can use a torch. And then you also have your epoxy. In this case, we're using Promise Tabletop Epoxy. Seems to be a pretty good product. Super easy to use, super easy to put down. You do want to watch your temperature. So you want to keep it around the 70 degrees. Seems to be where we had the best luck on it flowing out well. If you get too cold, it doesn't want to flow as good. If you get some heat to it, keep it around 70, 70-ish, somewhere in there, you get some good flowing results. Now, all right, so this first part of this video is actually going to be on the lower bar top that we're going to do. And I'm kind of going to breeze through it because a lot of this stuff is the same stuff we're going to do towards the end on the nice bar top. But I'm going to at least show you a few little things. So let's get to it. So when you're mixing this stuff, you want to mix your hardener in first and then put your epoxy on it. It just mixes better that way. That epoxy itself is actually a lot thicker and the hardener is a lot lighter, so it just kind of helps blend it in some. But mix it thoroughly, but don't go crazy on stirring it fast. So here I'm using the brush and just kind of brushing it up into the top side, hitting that area first. You really want to get that area up on that upper side first and kind of let it run down into your bottom. It kind of flows out better. So we're getting those edges, those corners, those upper parts. Kind of skip it through. We're going to go ahead and now hit it with a heat gun and just let those air bubbles pop. Kind of help move that material, loosen it up a little bit. We were doing this in the shop and it was a pretty decent temperature there. You can see here as we're kind of just buzzing down through there, you'll see some of those air bubbles kind of pop out. Now this is just a seal coat. This is not the finish coat. So we're not trying to lay it on thick or anything of that nature. We're just trying to get a nice good seal coat. We do it a little bit thicker than most people do, but as long as you get your air bubbles out, come back and sand it, you're good to go. So here we are, and there's one tool in this that you see that I didn't mention earlier, and that is that oscillating tool. And the reason being is that is only really an issue when you end up having to use like in the corners or anything with a 90-degree inside corner. Basically, get done sanding, wipe it with denatured alcohol. All right, getting ready to pour the next coat. Hopefully it'll be our last. I dammed it up on this side a little bit just to try to keep as much as we can in there. All right, so we've got it sanded, wiped down. We did move it from out in the shop into the game room because we have heat and cool in here, so able to keep the temperature at a pretty good steady pace. I mean, it's not bad out there, but it's a little cool. So we brought it in here, cranked the heat up a little bit, but we're now ready to start putting a finishing coat, hopefully. Oh, we may have to do one more coat, but we're gonna shoot for, hopefully this should be it. I mean, we've got a good seal coat at this point, sanded it, wiped it down, so on to the next. All right, so here we go. This is the actual flood coat. We are starting to pile this stuff on here and really try to get it on there. So you see it's just kind of working and moving the material around. I make a few batches up to try to make sure we get enough to fill it in. So on the initial seal coat, roughly about 1 ounce per square inch. And then really your flood coat, you can kind of do whatever you want. That's how thick you want it. We ended up with about 3 ounces per square foot. I think I said square foot earlier. It's supposed to be square foot. Not sure what I said. Take that back. Once again, we moving this stuff around real good. You see me trying to get some of this little spot here that I've got a little issue with. But I'm kind of working the air gun right in there, heat gun, making sure we get it moved around. Got it flowing good. Sometimes you have to go back and keep working a few little sections here and there just to make sure you get it how you want it. All right, so we're 20 ounces worth of material put down there. Actually, repeat that, 40 ounces worth of material. So this is 40 ounces of epoxy on this coat here. Hopefully we won't have to do another one, but we may. So we use that heat gun to kind of get the bubbles out, and sometimes you can kind of use it to manipulate the material. If you have a low spot, stuff like that, you can kind of help push it. You got to be careful though, because you can create air bubbles in there. So, all right, so here we have our top. We're getting ready to start cutting. This is actually a 2 1/4 inch piece of cypress thick. So our track saw, which I showed you, I think, in another video, maybe not. We're just using a Craig track saw. Best thing since sliced bread. But we are going to be using it to cut this. So basically, this is our cut lines here. Now, up here, we're not going to square corner this. We're actually going to radius it. We're going to do that with a hole saw. And what we're going to end up doing is drilling the pilot hole all the way through. And we're going to basically go half the slab, then the other half of the slab. So, yeah, we're going to get to it. This is that track saw. I can't describe to you how great this thing is to have. Very handy. Now, you have to keep an eye on it because your track can eventually wear out on the edge. But you can replace it, not a big issue. So this one here, the 4-footer we've got, it's just a little longer than 4 foot. That's what we use for this whole thing. I have a longer track section, but I didn't replace the pieces. So it's not cutting right. So I use the short one only. Here I am with the hole saw. You'll see me come through, and I just went through with a pilot bit there to go all the way through the end. I'm going to go ahead and drill this side. Now you notice I'm center punching as well. You want to center punch, keep that drill as straight as you can. So I get my pilot hole there, we flip it over, and then come from the back side, and there we have it. Almost have it. There it is. So, what do we do next? We take that track saw and we go halfway one side, halfway the other to get to that hole. It was the best, easiest solution. You're going to have a little bit of cleanup, but nothing that a darn orbital sander can't take care of very easily. Get everything lined up nice. You notice I'm having to come from the other direction to make sure I stay on my line like I want. And here we go down the long side. So we actually made a line all the way down through there so we know to move the track down where it needed to go. And there's our center section. So here we're cutting the end off right here. And oops, I just broke it, but it didn't matter because it was a little section that was coming off. That one against the wall. Here's our scraps. This is what's left over. We got some special projects for these coming up very soon. And here's our nice piece. We've got a nice edge on everything. We're keeping the live edge on the front and the other side. Bringing back out that orbital sander. We're going to hit all the sides very nice, as good as we can. Come back and I'm going to hit the top as well. I'm kind of going to go over that. I've already done that before, but I want to go over it again, get my lines off of there. Now we're going to route. Yes, we routed the live edge on the bottom. I didn't want to leave that sharp edge there, so we went back with the router. And you notice it leaves a little tiny lip there. But we take this orbital sander, I come back on it, and I just clean it all off, and it turned out freaking phenomenal. Just really nice to the hand. So here we got the tarp down. We got some tape sitting here on our sawhorses. That way we don't have to worry about the epoxy getting on it. And we are doing our seal coat. Finally. So we're just brushing it through, hitting it with the air gun, getting those bubbles back off of there as good as we can. All right, so here we are the next morning after doing this seal coat, and it's looking pretty dang good. So we go a little bit thick on these seal coats. Honestly, I mean, some people do a really light coat, but we actually try to put a pretty decent amount on there. And now we'll come back here in just a bit, we'll sand it, and then we'll go back with a whole nother coat on there. But it's looking really, really good. We're going to sand it, which you're not going to see, but we're going to sand it again with a 320. Make sure we get it all good and flat again. And then here we go with our final coat. This is the one we've been looking for. What are we going to get? So I made up a few batches here. You know, I'm using these 1 quart containers, or yeah, I think they're 1 quart, whatever they are. And they work really well. You honestly don't mix too much up at one time either. So it works really well. I went and mixed a few batches up, come over and pour it out. Frank's going through and kind of smoothing everything out with that squeegee? Is that right? That sounds weird. You see me coming back and just kind of moving that material, just getting it moved over into place. You're not trying to rake it off or anything. You're just trying to get it good and flat and helping it lay down. Now, when we're doing this, it was at nighttime, and it's gotten a little bit cooler in there, and it wasn't quite moving how we wanted to, so we cracked open the darn furnace, or the flamethrower, whatever you want to call it, the heater, and we got some heat going in there. And look at that, folks. By the time we got done with this thing, it just turned out amazing. Can't ask for a better result, personally. Super beautiful reflection, nice and flat. Now, the one thing you're going to have happen is there's going to be some drips on the bottom side. You know, we try to keep up with it, but eventually you ain't staying there all night with this thing, you know, till it's done. You're going to have drips. Take your sander, go back and hit the bottom, clean it up, smooth it up. You're good to go. All right, now let's get this thing installed and see how it actually looks. Bar top, super smooth, super shiny, ultra reflective. Honestly, a super easy process. Couldn't do anything remotely as good as this any other way. I mean, this is just amazing how it turned out. Really love it. We got the top bar done, bottom bar done. I think we're definitely going to enjoy this space a lot. This game room's coming together really good. We still got more to build in here, as we've got the back portion of the bar to build, and that's a whole nother project in itself, but it's going to be pretty neat, so stay tuned for that one. But until then, catch you next time.